Good evening. I'm Erin Wright, Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy for Brooklyn Borough President Antonio Reynoso. This Uniform Land Use Review Procedure public hearing is being conducted from the Brooklyn Borough Hall courtroom. There are 3 applications on the agenda. Please note that this hearing is being recorded to comply with the open meetings law. The video will be posted on the Borough Presidents YouTube channel. Following the applicants' presentations and our question and answer session, members of the public who are in attendance tonight will have the opportunity to testify on the applications. All comments are limited to 2 minutes. Members of the public may also submit comments to testimony@brooklynbp.nyc.gov for the Borough President's consideration until Friday, March 1st, 2024. Please call the first item.
Good evening. My name is Britt Bird, Senior Planner for Borough President Reynoso. We are starting actually with the second item on the agenda tonight. So that is Red Hook Coastal Resiliency. The Department of Design and Construction, Department of Transportation, Department of Citywide Administrative Services, and Department of Parks and Recreation are seeking city map amendments to regrade and elevate several streets and map new parkland to enlarge Todd Triangle Park, as well as acquisitions related to easements along private property to facilitate a neighborhood-wide flood resiliency project in Red Hook Community District 6. Community Board 6 voted to conditionally approve this item on February 21st. So if you could please state your name and present the application from the podium. Great. Oh, you just couldn't do it.
Any members of the team who will be speaking to the project can feel free to step up.
Testing. Hi, everyone. My name is Eric Ilyevich. I'm Director of Coastal Resiliency from the Department of Design and Construction, also known as DDC. Also joining me here tonight are other folks from DDC, from the Parks Department, from City Planning, and I believe DEP, right on cue. Welcome. Joining me tonight, and also from our consultant team, NV5, Joe Menzer will be joining me presenting tonight. Sorry, here we go. All right, so our agenda tonight includes the following. We'll have a brief overview and schedule. We'll look at existing conditions and the risk of coastal flood surge. We'll recap the design and the design process and review, and we'll have an overview of the environmental review and a closer look at the ULURP land use actions. And then we'll sum up everything and take a look at next steps. So let's review the goals of the project and look at the schedule. The Red Hook Coastal Resilience Project provides for or addresses the following. We passively provide coastal flood protection to the area to elevation 8 feet, and additionally include deployable features, also known as floodgates, to increase the protection to elevation 10 feet. We minimize, where possible, impacts to access, including to pedestrians, cyclists, and vehicles. And we maintain connectivity in the community and access to the active waterfront. We provide enhancements to the BWG, also known as the Brooklyn Waterfront Greenway, and we reduce flood impacts to existing drainage. So here is the schedule if we look from top to bottom. PDC review and approval will be coordinated as we finalize design, and we're aiming for this spring. The public review of the EA is complete, and FEMA will address the comments received during the comment period. And we are now in the ULURP process, which is what brings us all here today, and through August of this year. And design completion is imminent with about 100% design draft review beginning at the end of next month, or March. And community engagement has been and will continue to be a critical component of this entire process. So now we'll take a look and review what we've heard recently about the project throughout design. And this is just a general overview of the community and stakeholder engagement to date for the project through design. So here are some questions and comments that we've heard along the way, and we'll be very brief and just hit some of these highlights here. So concerns about the level of flood protection. Our design team went back to the drawing boards and developed a new flood protection system that protects the community to 99.9% of all historical storms at elevation 10. Public transportation requests helped inform the improvements to the BWG, an alternative form of transportation. Ensure that flood protection is not just a stark wall, which was addressed in the design by incorporating different elements like raising street grades, which act as the line of flood protection. Other comments about the BWG were addressed, and we also heard suggestions about specific sites in the area, but are simply just beyond the scope, or the specific scope, aim, and goals of this project. At 30% design, we heard the following regarding the alignment of flood protection, leaving some areas unprotected. A study was conducted to consider alternative alignments, but given the requirements of the FEMA grant, was deemed infeasible to build flood protection elements outside of the city's right-of-way. We heard concerns about the bathtub effect, and working with DEP, we have added backflow prevention on all of the outfalls that have a connection to open drainage structures within the dry side of the flood protection system. DEP has also initiated a larger study to address rainfall events and interior drainage. However, this project, the Red Hook Coastal Resiliency Project, is specifically to address coastal flooding. And how is the team addressing concerns about the height of intervention? So the protection was increased from 2 feet from the original feasibility study to address 99.9% of historical storms and sea level rise out 50 more years. Increasing the level of protection beyond that would start to include walls 5 feet and higher, cutting people off from the waterfront and expanding the footprint of the flood protection into more of the neighborhood. These alternatives were explored, but ultimately, per cost-benefit analysis requirements of the federal funding were found not feasible. And then at 60%, we heard these comments and were addressed in this way. So comments about truck rerouting informed a redesign of Ferris Street, and a proposed one-way conversion was eliminated. And DOT has undertaken a neighborhood-wide study that will be implemented as a separate future project. Concerns about the Todd Street Triangle impacting future Halleck Street connection raises several complexities like parkland alienation, potential environmental remediation issues, and changes to the city map, which just do not exist with the current proposed design. Until any changes for Halleck are realized, the Todd Street Triangle green space is a valuable asset to the community. Mitigation of any tree removals includes tweaks to the alignment to avoid trees wherever possible, including the BWG alignment with a total net gain of trees overall, and wherever possible include nature-based solutions which resulted in BMPs, or best management practices, in the project area and allow for infiltration into the subsurface and reduce runoff and flooding. And then at 90%, reminder of concerns about truck routes again, which the city hears and continues to consider in the ongoing study. We want to note that nothing that the Red Hook Coastal Resiliency Project builds impedes the study of potential changes to the street network. In general, concerns about stormwater and drainage overall. The project funding was specifically allocated for, again, coastal flood protection. And DEP has an independent project, water and sewer main project, currently in design for Red Hook. We'll take a look at that in the next slide. Requests for green infrastructure and permeable surfaces are noted, and the project includes infiltration basins as previously mentioned. And regarding cobblestones, due to the notable issues including maintenance, ADA access, and safety concerns, they cannot be retained. And DOT looked into options to reuse them, but does not currently have the real estate to store them. So regarding, again, what we've heard about the ongoing comments and concerns about drainage and runoff, DDC is working with DEP to complete the design of a second phase of infrastructure upgrades. This will be completed next year, which is a $50 million investment. The project includes upsizing of the sewers, which increases capacity and reduces backups and flooding, and upgrades to the water mains provide overall resiliency. So now we will turn it over to, again, Joe Menzer from NV5 to take a closer look at the project.
Thank you, Eric. So I'm going to walk you through just 3 sections of the project. We're going to talk a little bit about existing conditions. We'll walk through the actual elements of the flood protection system, and then we'll talk a little bit about ULURP, what we're really here to focus on today. All right. So just a little bit sort of high level of the flood protection system. The system is made up of 2 independent systems. Okay, the first system is the one we just highlighted here along Atlantic Avenue. Okay, sorry. The first system here is along Atlantic Avenue, which was highlighted and has now kind of moved off. And the second system here is along Beard Street at the bottom of your screen, where we have highlighted now. And then there's an area between those two systems where the existing grades are actually above elevation 10 currently. And the same thing happens on the east side of the project area. You have existing grades that are above elevation 10. So when all these pieces are linked together, you get a flood protection system that surrounds the entire neighborhood to elevation 10. And that system is made up both of passive and active components, which we'll see in a second. So a little bit more about the existing conditions of the neighborhood. Generally, Red Hook is characterized by an industrial waterfront and has a residential core. There is a band of mixed-use area between those two. The largest land ownership in Red Hook is actually by the Housing Authority, and about 70% of the residents of Red Hook live in the Red Hook houses. There are a couple of notable exceptions to the general land use of the area. There is IKEA, which is along the waterfront, which does differ from the general industrial and manufacturing use of the waterfront. And it's also key to note here that most of the waterfront, with a couple of key exceptions, is all private. So there's very little public area along the waterfront. And that played a big part in our actual design alignments for the protection system. As Eric noted, everything had to be within the public right-of-way, and flood protection systems along the waterfront would not be. A little bit more about the sort of the zoning of the area. As I mentioned, you have these manufacturing zones that are along the outside of the neighborhood, and then you have the sort of the interior core, which is more residential. You'll notice also that there are truck routes that wrap through the neighborhood. Those are noted by the dark red lines that you see on the map here. Those truck routes run through the neighborhood, down Van Brunt Street and down around Beard Street, and then out towards the east side of the properties. A little bit about how public policy has changed over the last few years. The zoning has remained mostly unchanged since 1961. However, in 1996, Community Board 6 approved a 197A plan for Red Hook, covering the area outlined here in pink. The plan sought to balance dual goals of increasing housing supply while preserving and growing the neighborhood's industrial economy. The plan also included a number of proposals, including mixed-use zone studies, increased public waterfront access, and a truck route modification. Following the 197.8 plan, the Red Hook stores area was rezoned and remapped in 2002, and then you had an additional rezoning for IKEA in 2004. The majority of the proposed project is located within the Southwest Brooklyn Industrial Business Zone, IBC, which was established in 2006. And the IBC actually spans Red Hook's industrial waterfront and extends both north to the Columbia Waterfront District and then south to Sunset Park. Another key note of the area are the existing topography of Red Hook. The majority of the neighborhood shown here in sort of this bluish green color is in the 1% annual chance of flood hazard, and so that would, or the 100-year flood zone. And so that basically would suggest, or that means that every year there's a 1% chance of a 100-year flood within that area. The topography in that area is about 4 to 8 feet in elevation. You also note a couple of areas in orange here. We talked a little bit about them a few minutes ago. Those are the areas that are 10 feet and higher in elevation. Those areas are the 500-year flood zones. And that's what we use to tie our flood protection system into. So the natural topography really helped out with the flood protection system. All right, so talking a little bit about the actual flood protection system itself. We'll do this pretty quickly. Let's see here, a little more detail on the flood protection system. With an understanding of the flood protection system and the difference between height and elevation, we are actually proposing here a wall of an elevation of 10. But the highest wall within the neighborhood is about 4 feet high when measured off the sidewalk. So that understanding that an elevation of 10 does not mean a wall that is 10 feet high. The light blue throughout the corridor here are streets that are being reconstructed and regraded. Some of these areas are being raised and others are being regraded to improve interior drainage. The dark blue line is the extent of the permanent concrete flood wall. The orange and yellow nodes are deployable gates that allow the system to achieve a flood protection at a higher elevation, elevation 10. And the purple areas are independent flood protection components around critical areas outside of the public right-of-way. Just some of the components here in a little bit more detail. The project utilizes flood walls, roller gates, and flip-up gates. To the left, you can see the concrete flood walls, and with the woman that's standing in the picture, the rendering, you get an idea of the height of the maximum height of one of these flood wall systems. In the middle, you have the rolling gates, and these are flood walls that will be stored at the back of sidewalk, and then they are manually actuated, and then will roll into place to close off sections of Red Hook and complete the flood protection system. And then finally, over on the right, you have flip-up gates, and those gates are flush with the sidewalk. You'll be able to walk in and out of the areas where those are located, and when required, they are flipped up into place. And they also help complete the flood protection system at an elevation 10. Without some of these movable components, we still have a flood protection system at elevation 8. And so a little bit now about environmental review and the land use actions and kind of what we're here to talk about tonight. An EA was completed for this project following the FEMA format and meeting all the requirements of the city's seeker and state secret system. A current final draft FEMA EA was published on FEMA's website in January of 2024. The official review period will kick off, or did kick off, with the public notice on January 26th, and the comment period will end 30 days after that publication, which was a few days ago on February 25th. So in addition to the EA process, which is sort of independent and separate to the ULURP process, which is what we're here to talk about tonight, the EA is essentially complete now, and we've submitted our joint application to the Department of City Planning on behalf of the 4 city agencies for the ULURP process to start. That's the New York City Department of Design and Construction, Department of Transportation, Citywide Administrative Services, and Parks and Recreation. And that application is for changes to the city map and acquisitions to facilitate construction, operation, and maintenance of the Red Hook Coastal Resiliency Flood Protection System. This map is kind of an overview of all the actions. We're going to have a couple of maps here that break this down a little bit more detail. All right, so first thing we'll talk about is the street grade changes. There are a number of proposed changes in the existing city map highlighted on this plan in orange. Changes to the legal street grades are noted here as well. And those are the circles that you see all around the maps with the plus signs in the middle of them. And then we have actual changes to the map themselves. So these are mapping exercises on Sullivan Street, west of Ferris Street. That's one that's identified as SS. And then you also have a mapping of the park land next to Todd's Triangle, and that one is marked as TT. So these actions here are the areas where we're facilitating the project by acquisition or acquisition of easements, as it's identified here. To facilitate the easements, city planning refers to these as acquisitions. And there are 20 private lots along the route where we do need to acquire an easement, and those easements are generally for maintenance of the flood protection system, the gates, and the movable barriers. It's not real acquisition of property, it's acquisition of an easement to maintain and to inspect that property in consideration of the FEMA requirements for the flood protection system. This is kind of a more detailed map of all the ULURP actions. We've broken this up, so this is sort of the first half of the project. This is the Atlantic Basin area. And if you don't get all this information now, these presentations will all be made available, so you'll be able to look through these things in detail. But on this map, you're seeing here both the map changes or the grade changes to the map, as well as the required easements or acquisitions within the Atlantic Basin area. And then this is a very similar map for the Beard Street area. Again, the ones you see in yellow are the map changes, and the ones you see in pink or purple, those are the easements or acquisitions that are required. I'm going to back up one more time, and just the dark blue line that runs through all these maps, that is the generalized alignment of the flood protection system. So it gives you an idea of where the flood protection system is and where those map changes or those acquisitions are also required. All right, so next steps in this process is sort of this is more of a sort of a summary and next steps at the same time. So we have this passive system at elevation 8 that we've developed, and with those active deployable features, the gates and the roller gates and the flip-up gates, we end up with a level of protection at elevation 10. So the system of flood walls, raised street grates, deployable floodgates, and supporting infrastructure all work together with the existing topography at the high points that we noted at the beginning of this presentation, which allows us to minimize the built infrastructure and tie into the existing topography. And the project also has a number of amenities associated with it as well, like the Brooklyn Waterfront Greenway, Todd Triangle, the incorporation of best management practices and green infrastructure throughout the route, and a number of other amenities as part of the overall project. We are kind of the same sort of we are here now, looking at sort of at the bottom, the purple line here for the ULURP mapping action. This is the beginning or the kickoff for the Borough Presidents review period, and so from this point on, there'll be 30 days of review for this mapping action. Some more information about the project is always available on our website, and we're pretty good about keeping that updated, so if you do have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us at any time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we have just a few questions. Can you speak to concerns that the proposed changes to Todd Triangle would interfere with a community request for a rerouted truck route?
Yep. So the reconstruction of Todd Triangle does not propose any additional barriers with the community's request to change the land use or a portion of the land use for reestablishing New York City DOT's right-of-way to extend Halleck Street from Columbia Street on the west to Clinton Street on the east. Considered alienation. The use of parkland. And the following steps would be required for the entire project area, including the area of Todd Triangle. Funding would need to be established for the initial study. The mayor's office would need to draft a bill for state assembly approval. A new EIS would need to be completed as well as a traffic study. Then we would also file a separate unified land use review procedure, ULURP, application for that action. And development of construction documents and funding of construction documents would also have to happen within that time. So what we're doing by reconfiguring Todd's Triangle is providing an amenity that's going to be around for a number of years, and if this action is to come to fruition, that amenity will just be modified along with all the other changes that have to happen within Red Hook Park.
Thank you. To what degree were nature-based or soft edge solutions considered in this design?
Mm-hmm. So by definition, soft edge solutions would consider the water's edge for implementation. As we talked about a little bit earlier in the presentation, the water's edge is not available to us for implementation. That area is mostly private and not public, and as part of the funding for this project, our flood protection system had to remain within the public right-of-way or within New York City DOT's right-of-way. However, we did look at a number of systems that did use the water's edge in the earlier parts of this study. With regards to nature-based solutions, we have included green infrastructure along the alignment in various locations, and that is part of our current study. And those nature-based solutions are really focused on precipitation and not coastal inundation, because they're on the inside, the dry side of the wall flood protection system.
Thank you. And last question, will the regraded streets be using permeable pavement? Mm-hmm. And how will the new paving compare to the existing cobblestones in terms of permeability?
Yeah. So the existing design does not incorporate permeable pavements. We did look at that and consider it. Again, because of the commercial industrial area of the neighborhood, a lot of the truck traffic and a lot of what's happening there, the permeable pavements would require an incredible amount of maintenance over a short period of time. It'd be constant maintenance to make sure they were still permeable. If you were to kind of ride down the neighborhood now and after any sort of precipitation event with the cobblestones that are there, you notice that there's tons of flooding and ponding all over the place because the cobblestones themselves have now been compacted, all the soils underneath them, they no longer are permeable either. So we are not looking at permeable pavements as part of this project. And the second question was, how will the new paving compare to the existing cobblestones in terms of permeability? So same thing, kind of, I sort of mentioned that already. The existing cobblestones are not permeable anymore. If they were at one point, all that area has been silted up, and so they do act pretty much as a solid pavement. And so we'll be removing them and putting in pavements that are typical of New York City streets. So they're concrete pavements with asphalt wearing courses.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
The panel is excused.
Thank you very much.
We will now call for testimony on this application from members of the public in attendance tonight. Please note that all comments are limited to 2 minutes.
So if you joined us later, in order to submit public testimony, make sure to fill out one of these slips and you can bring it up to the desk. And make sure to indicate which agenda item you would like to testify on. So they're available on the desk up there, and then you can bring them up here, and we'll read them out. So we have 2 slips so far. First is Edna Mieles. Yes.
Hi, good evening. My name is Edna Mieles. I'm a long-term resident in Red Hook. And I don't know if this is the venue to ask this question, but I'm really concerned about the acquisitions related to the easements along private property. They will affect my properties I have on Beard Street and on Van Brunt Street. The ones on Van Brunt is a commercial space where they have their trucks and they have to load and unload. And on my private property on Beard Street, I'm concerned about the grading and actually the acquisitions related to the easements. What does that actually mean? How it's going to affect my property, the taxes, how it's going to be maintained, and overall, what that actually means in terms of my deed and stuff like that. And that's it.
Thank you.
Thanks. Next, we have Melissa Sicchetti.
My name's Melissa Sicchetti. I'm a resident of Beard Street as well. Edna and I are also part of the Beard Street Block Association. Sorry, I have a soft voice. I actually teach, and I still have a soft voice. But anyway, originally I was going to ask about the level of the street at the end of Beard at +8. My house is actually at +9, so it kind of will. My end of Beard Street is higher than the other one. I think what's confusing is right now, the documents I saw online recently aren't very clear how the wall and the street in relationship to sidewalks, they're like these kind of crop views as opposed to section cuts along the route. I'm also an architect, and I've done a lot of work in Red Hook and in flood zones. So I think it's a really good thing what we're doing, but I think for clarity and to ease residents' fears about access to their property along any of the raised streets, you need super clear section cuts through the building to the sidewalk, to the raised roads, because the kind of snippets that I've seen so far don't really give a clear enough indication of what's going on. And if I can't read it, as an architect, I don't think laymen can read it. So that's one of the big concerns for me. And also, like, if the road is raised in front of your house, how do you get down to your house? Like all these kind of minutia details, but those are really important to kind of like get the neighbors and the residents to buy into such a proposal so they don't feel like their property value is going to plummet into the ground. And their access, like if they're curb cuts, R5 neighborhoods, you're required to have off-street parking when you do a residence. So, well, what's going to happen if I'm required to do like all the kind of minutia with the zoning and what's required with the zoning versus how this will impact properties are, I think, foremost in people's concerns.
Thank you.
So next we have Victoria. I'm sorry, I can't quite read it. Thank you. Alexander. No worries.
Hi, my name is Victoria Alexander. Well, I'm a lot louder than you. From the Red Hook Business Alliance and Resilient Red Hook, who's been doing work on this for over a decade since Hurricane Sandy. These comments were submitted through the process through CB6, but want to make note that you guys understand our concerns about this process. I'm just going to go over a couple of things that we think have not been addressed in the plan and need to be addressed before you guys move forward. There's been no comprehensive analysis and infrastructure upgrades. We once again emphasize the urgent need for a thorough analysis and upgrade of our sewer and stormwater system. That our HCR project must incorporate a detailed study to address the existing infrastructure vulnerabilities that pose significant risk to our community's health and environmental safety. A detailed cost-benefit analysis and risk analysis of this process has not been done, and considering that I'll circle back on that because I don't want to run over my 2 minutes, but that also with the hearing tonight, there's going to be the removal of cobblestone streets. The preservation of Red Hook cobblestone street is crucial to maintaining our neighborhood's unique character and heritage. Any resiliency measures that integrate these historical elements ensuring our rich history is honored and preserved for our future generations. Many utility projects along the street curb have already removed the cobblestone street and replaced them with asphalt. We've also lost many historic structures. There's not one landmark building in all of Red Hook. We've asked landmarks to consider many projects and buildings in the neighborhood, and not one, because it is an industrial neighborhood, and that is the most overlooked type of landmark type of property. The flood wall design and CSO pollution concerns. The proposed flood wall design and the installation of stop check valves to mitigate CSO pollution present significant concerns. The potential for a bathtub effect and CSO backup into homes and streets during system engagement highlights the need for a reevaluation of these design elements to prevent adverse health and safety impacts on our residents and businesses. Recent data from the preliminary Mayor's Management Report reveals a concerning trend that directly impacts the well-being and safety of our community. From July 1 through October 2023, New Yorkers reported almost 5,400 complaints to 311 regarding sewer backups, marking a nearly
We're past
14
2 minutes.
increase.
If-
Submitted the comments online.
Okay.
Okay,
Thanks
great.
so much.
Yes. You can submit to testimony at brooklynbp.nyc.gov. Next, we have Nathan Shepard.
Okay, I think I can make this pretty quick. It's pretty much concurring exactly what Victoria just walked forward. Cobblestone is the reason why I moved to this neighborhood 14 years ago. Find it a little bit weird that we're going to remove that completely. There's a whole other conversation about historic landmarking and industrial products, but back to what we're doing here. Last meeting I was at with this being walked out, I came away from it realizing that they were not going to put a catch basin in like they have at Owl's Head. This is a 52 million gallon catch over at Gowanus. They're not going to do that. The DEP is not going to do that. They don't have enough money for that. That's fine. There's going to be a lot of flood prevention going into the COS system. But as an anecdote, King Street and Van Brunt, I just called in a drainage block probably a week ago. And I thought the DEP was going to show up and just pull some trash out of the drainage, and then that was going to be it. They actually had to rip open King Street, and it took them a week to fix that one piece. It was a subcontractor. I talked to him about 4 days later, and his basic opinion, and again, he's getting paid, so take that for what it is that the system is generally in not great shape. So I would ask that at least we could do either like an assessment of the drainage that's currently there, run some cameras into a lot of the drainage, see what's going on, because the flood wall is really neat. But when the system gets backed up, which it obviously will when the New York City harbor fills up, all of the work going into people's homes that are hopefully check valved, it's all just going to possibly get stuck underneath the street. So, is that my 2 minutes? Cool. Right,
Thank you.
thanks.
That exhausts all of the slips we have. Is there anyone else who would like to testify on this item?
Okay, hearing no further comment, this item is now closed. So please call the next item, which will be the first item.
So calendar item number 1, 850 3rd Avenue DOF site selection and acquisition. A combination site selection and acquisition action to facilitate 31,900 square feet of space for active storage and furniture refurbishment by the Department of Finance is being sought by DOF and the Department of Citywide Administrative Services at 850 3rd Avenue in Sunset Park, Community District 7. Community Board 7 declined to hear or vote on this item. Please state your name and present this application.
Hi, I'm Lisa Lau. I'm with AKRF. We prepared the land use application, environmental review, and fair share criteria documentation for this application on behalf of the co-applicants, the New York City Department of Finance, DOF, and the New York City Department of Citywide Administrative Services, DCAS. This is an application for a site selection and acquisition action jointly sought by DOF and DCAS to facilitate approximately 31,900 square feet of space for DOF related to active storage and furniture refurbishment, as well as 750 square feet of space on the adjacent parking lot at 850 3rd Avenue in the Sunset Park neighborhood of Brooklyn, Community District 7. The project site is located at 850 3rd Avenue and is bounded by 2nd Avenue to the west, 3rd Avenue and the elevated Gowanus Expressway to the east, 30th Street to the north, and 32nd Street to the south. Block 671, Lot 1 contains an 8-story building known as Liberty Brooklyn with approximately 1.13 million square feet of floor area, including light manufacturing, retail, and commercial office space uses. Block 675, Lot 10 contains the building's adjacent surface parking lot, which is used by visitors. This view is looking north from the parking lot toward the building. Here we are looking northwest toward the site from 3rd Avenue. And this is looking northeast toward the site from 2nd Avenue. Oops. DOF records contain personal and confidential information that must be maintained in accordance with Internal Revenue Service, IRS, high security protocols. In 2014, IRS publication 1075 provided new regulations regarding the storage of sensitive information. As a result of these new regulations, it was imperative that DOF obtain secure file storage with 24-hour, 7-day-a-week self-service access for DOF employees. DOF currently maintains 2 operational storage facilities in the Sunset Park neighborhood of Brooklyn. One is located at Industry City, 148-19 39th Street, which the city has leased since 1997, and the other is on the 5th floor of the building at 850 3rd Avenue, the site subject to this application, which is on a short-term license agreement with the property owner. As part of the recent lease negotiations at the Industry City location, the landlord requested that DOF reduce its footprint, which led to the consolidation and relocation of storage space to the 5th floor of the 850 3rd Avenue site through the short-term license agreement currently in place. This application will permit the short-term license agreement at 850 3rd Avenue to become a long-term lease. In addition to complying with IRS requirements, DOF and DCAS have determined that long-term use of the space at 850 3rd Avenue is necessary because it provides dedicated and secure loading and elevator access for DOF's operations and an improved layout for the space compared to the Industry City location. 2 spaces with electric chargers would be reserved for DOF vehicles which transport DOF materials from one location to the other. No parking would be provided for employees who would be expected to use mass transit. The space at 850 3rd Avenue would primarily be used for active storage of DOF records and a workshop for furniture refurbishment, such as chairs and desks used in various DOF facilities across the city. As assessed in the environmental assessment, up to 20 employees would frequent the location for loading, unloading, and furniture repair, and would not be located there on a permanent basis. The space would be accessible 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. However, typical hours of operation would be Monday through Friday during business hours, and no employees would be anticipated in the space on weekends. DOF employees would be permitted to use a dedicated loading dock and elevator to access the storage space. Here are some photos of the space currently in use through the short-term license agreement. This first photo shows the main vestibule receiving area with DOF secured entrances and the dedicated elevator. This is the furniture refurbishment area. Here you can see the main open area containing storage and warehouse space for office furniture and other equipment. And finally, this is the separate room dedicated to secure storage of files and records. With that, I'll leave this summary slide up, and we're happy to answer any questions. I'm joined tonight by DOF and DCAS representatives for the project.
Thank you. What other sites were evaluated for locating this facility?
I'll turn that over to John from.
I'm John Kosa. I'm Director of Leasing at DCAS, and I've been involved in this project, not from the beginning, because it's gone on for quite a few years, but I'm involved now. The project was started in a pre-COVID, a much different real estate market. We looked at a number of sites. We hired a tenant rep, Cushman & Wakefield, to do a site survey. We've looked at least 6 or 8 sites, which I can list here. 4312 2nd Avenue in Brooklyn, 3913 2nd Avenue in Brooklyn, 105 Evergreen Avenue, Brooklyn, 1450 3rd Street, Brooklyn, 6626 Metropolitan Avenue in Queens, and 3353 Flatbush. There may have been a couple of other sites. So there we go.
Thank you. And I know you mentioned this briefly in the presentation, but can you reiterate how many jobs are estimated to be located on site?
Our environmental assessment statement assessed up to 20, but no group would be there on a permanent full-time basis. It would be just to load and unload and for some of the furniture reimbursement, refurbishment activities.
Thank you. The panel is excused, so thanks so much.
Thank you.
We'll now call for testimony on this application from members of the public in attendance tonight. Please note that all comments are limited to 2 minutes. Do we have any? No. No one wants to testify on this one? Okay. All right. This item is now closed. Please call the next item.
Calendar item number 3, Cypress Hills Fulton bid formation. An application from the Department of Small Business Services on behalf of the proposed Cypress Hills Fulton Street Business Improvement District, or BID, to form a new bid in Community District 5. This item was sent to Community Board 5 and the Borough President concurrently. Community Board 5 is scheduled to vote on this item tonight. Please state your name and present this application.
Thank you. My name is Shazam Mohammed. I am a representative of the Cypress Hills Fulton Bid Steering Committee. We're a committee of 14 people comprised of property owners, business owners, and residents who live within this proposed bid zone, which is Fulton Street between Elder Lane and Van Sicklen Avenue. It's 26 blocks long, and it encompasses 377 properties. To start off, we partnered with Perch Advisors, and they helped us put together a needs assessment survey where people of the neighborhood expressed their concerns and share their ideas of what needs to be done and what changes they'd like to be made in their community. Using these survey results, the Cypress Hills Fulton Bid Steering Committee created a list of objectives that reflect the concerns of the community. And in short, these are a cleaner environment, a cleaner neighborhood, a safer community, and a neighborhood that's more aesthetically pleasing. There's also a call for support of local businesses. It was determined that a budget of $400,000 would be able to, one, fulfill the goals as stated, and at the same time be affordable for the property owners in the neighborhood. And to inform the community of our plans and to garner support for this project, we embarked on a comprehensive outreach program, which lasted most of the last 6 years. We've had over 2,500 mailings. We've had over 2,500 phone calls. We've had over 250 online engagements and almost 1,000 in-person visits. We've distributed literature in English, in Spanish, in Mandarin, Bengali, Cantonese, Korean. We've had 2 public meetings. We've had 47 steering committee meetings, which, again, went all through COVID. And even though, as of this point, we are not yet a fully formed bid, that hasn't stopped us from working. The steering committee in the last few years have had many cleanup events, including graffiti removal, trash pickup, mammogram outreach. We've had financial literacy workshops, partnering with local banks. We've had walkthroughs with the NYPD and with Council Member Sandy Nurse. We've had PPE distribution. We've had business resource fairs that connect local businesses with each other. And we've even had an ice cream truck that drove around on a hot day and gave kids ice cream. And it's not just the community at large that supports this project. We have written and verbal support for it from elected officials like Councilmember Sandy Nurse. We have Congresswoman Nydia Velasquez have supported us. We have State Senator Julio Salazar, State Assembly Member Eric Dillon. We have the backing of the Small Business Services Director's Office, Community Ward 5. We've presented our case to them as well. We've met with agents from the Department of Transportation and DCP who have also thrown their weight behind us and backed our project. And we're here today seeking the support of the Borough President's Office so that we can get this much needed project moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. So just a few questions. Has the bid team been in touch with DOT about potential open space and public realm opportunities such as plazas, open streets, or loading zones?
Sure. Hi, I'm Lowell Hirschberger. I'm the representative from Cypress Hills Local Development Corporation that has helped in facilitating this process. We've had a bit of contact with DOT, not a lot because the needs assessment really didn't prioritize public plazas. Safety and sanitation is really the focus from the needs assessment. We have had a bit of contact, though, in the corner of Hale and Hale, Arlington, and Fulton is one potential site for a plaza. We've also had conversations with the senior center in the corner of Richmond and Fulton as another potential location for a plaza at some point in the future.
Thank you. How does the bid plan to spend the $50,000 on public safety as outlined in the draft budget?
Sure. This safety was a long point of discussion, obviously a big priority for us. We met with a variety of different groups in terms of different strategies around safety, some from more community-based perspective and outreach, some more traditional safety. Obviously, the boards will be responsible for making spending decisions once that's formed. But we got a quote from a more traditional security company for one unarmed guard 30 hours a week. That would take the bulk of that $50,000. We also had penned in the idea of garnering more local support from local residents and providing stipends for local residents to be block captains, to do daily check-ins with the bid staff about safety issues. That was a model that we're exploring. And then a third quote we got was from a nonprofit organization that would focus more on homeless outreach and mental health outreach, and that's really the biggest piece of the safety issue that we addressed, and that came up through the steering committee. And so that sort of alternative model where we would do outreach and work with city agencies to make sure homeless outreach, crisis mental health outreach, and of course police involvement where necessary. And we also explored cure violence. So we'd like to get a Spanish-speaking cure violence provider in our neighborhood, which we don't have right now.
Thank you. You're excused. Thank you so much. We'll now call for testimony on this application from members of the public in attendance tonight. Please note that all comments are limited to 2 minutes. Is there anyone who wants to testify on this item? No? Okay, all right. Hearing no further comment, this item is now closed, and this ULURP public hearing is now closed. The Borough President will review these applications and submit his recommendations to the City Planning Commission, which will hold its hearing on these items at a later date. As a reminder, members of the public may submit comments to testimony at brooklynbp.nyc.gov for the Borough President's consideration until Friday, March 1st. This meeting is now adjourned.